Believe it or not, the first written record of strange happenings in the Bermuda Triangle can be found in the ship's log of Christopher Columbus. Lying becalmed in the Sargasso Sea, Columbus and his men witnessed strange lights dancing above and below the surface of the water. Little did they know that that would be among the most harmless of the events that would terrorize vessels in the Bermuda Triangle. The Mary Celeste was found floating adrift on the open sea. The vessel seemed to be in perfect condition, but the passengers and crew had disappeared without a trace. What happened to the 20-ton barge that should have been on the other end of this line? Did Flight 19, 5 Grumman bombers, really get lost flying from Fort Lauderdale to Bermuda? Or is there something else at work in this troubled part of the Atlantic Ocean? Could it be that the lost continent of Atlantis has something to do with the lost ships and planes of the Bermuda Triangle? What is it that grips pilots and seamen alike with a cold fear as they traverse these mysterious waters? From Columbus's day to our own, these and many other strange, unexplained anomalies have haunted this triangular piece of the Atlantic Ocean. Is there some rational explanation? Can we unravel the secret of the Bermuda Triangle?
We all go through life accepting what textbooks told us about the universe. But what happens when questions are raised about many of our fundamental beliefs? A mystery that cannot be explained. An enigma that defies reason. A surprising and unexpected answer. To encounter such a mystery firsthand may change your life forever. Face to face with the greatest riddles of the ages, the world's most profound mysteries reach out and touch your life in ways you never imagined possible. Encounters with the Unexplained.
In today's sophisticated society, many people tend to dismiss the so-called mystery of the Bermuda Triangle in the same way they would a superstition or a fairy tale. But unlike harmless fairy tales, the strange happenings in the Bermuda Triangle often result in loss of life, not to mention the enormous property losses. Given the growing body of evidence that something sinister, something well beyond our understanding is going on there, it seems the better part of wisdom to try and discover the truth behind the so-called legends of the Bermuda Triangle. To many, the Bermuda Triangle is nothing more than the nickname given to an area of the mid-Atlantic, roughly cornered by Florida, Puerto Rico, and the island of Bermuda. But is there something more? Is this relatively small piece of the Atlantic in some way different from other parts of our planet's oceans? According to those who study the mysteries of the Bermuda Triangle, there have been over 1,000 vanishings of everything from huge naval vessels to private boats, from small planes to commercial airliners since 1945 alone. And of course, not only the craft disappear forever, but all the people on board them as well.
I think the most spectacular mystery about the Devil's Triangle is probably one of the ones that's more played down than any other, and that's the disappearance of the Navy ship USS Cyclops. This was a 500-foot, 19,000-ton coaling ship, and this took place during World War I. Back then they had coal ships instead of tankers because most of the ships operated on coal. Well, this ship put to sea from Barbados in the British West Indies bound for Norfolk, Virginia. It was never seen again. The ship and the 300 officers and men disappeared without a trace.
Some claim that violent weather in the region is responsible, that sudden squalls have downed aircraft and sailing ships alike, sending them in moments to the bottom of the sea. Others, however, suggest a far more sinister force is at work. From the old Spanish Admiralty records that Columbus wrote, we learn that he was the first to record the strange and frightening images in the night sky over what we now call the Sargasso Sea.
Capitão! Something is wrong!
Can only guess at the nameless dread that must have filled the hearts of those intrepid seamen lost in a strange and frightening world.
Monstro, Capitan. What manner of world is this new land we venture into?
But from his log and reports, we know that the Columbus expedition encountered the same mysterious phenomena in the Bermuda Triangle that continues to haunt us even at the dawn of the 21st century. Columbus also recorded that the island natives, like the Caribs and the Arawaks of Puerto Rico, were long familiar with strange occurrences in this part of the world. Their legends contain many stories of sky gods and green fireboats that could fly in the sky or under the water. These natives wouldn't think of identifying these strange occurrences as unidentified flying objects, but modern observers have difficulty calling them anything else.
I myself have only had one experience on the Devil's Triangle, and that was in the southeastern Bahamas when I saw, or thought I saw, a lighthouse that wasn't there. Aside from that, I have not experienced anything unusual. But I've known people who've seen what they referred to as UFOs, green glows coming out of the sky and crashing into the water and disappearing down into the depths. And they referred to them as UFOs, and I guess that's what they were, UFOs. UFO doesn't necessarily mean flying saucer. UFO is unidentified flying object, and that is exactly what they were, unidentified flying objects. We don't know what they were.
I was sitting on the beach in Bimini one night when I looked towards Miami, Florida, and I saw a red light acting really erratic in the sky. So I took off my glasses and I cleaned them to see if there was anything on the lenses. There wasn't. So as far as I'm concerned, it was a UFO because I couldn't identify it.
But as strange as this and other stories may be, they pale in comparison to the more terrifying aspect of the Bermuda Triangle, the history of strange disappearances, the list of ships reported lost, the stories of ghostly derelicts, and the accounts of aircraft seemingly snatched from the skies is staggering. And virtually every lost vessel represents an appalling loss of life. One of the most famous lost aircraft cases is that of Flight 19, 5 aircraft that vanished together shortly after World War II. It's also the story that gives us the first clues linking the Bermuda Triangle to some sort of time-space vortex.
The Naval Air Station at Fort Lauderdale, Florida, was the scene of one of the most spectacular mysteries of the Bermuda Triangle. It began routinely enough on December 5th, 1945. An advanced training flight was scheduled for takeoff at 1400 hours. 5 pilots and 10 crew members were scheduled to go up. Ironically, their course was to be a simple triangle with an expected flight time of 2 hours. The flight leader was Lieutenant Charles Taylor, an experienced combat pilot with over 2,500 hours of flying time. Flight 19 had completed the first leg of the flight plan and turned north. Suddenly, all of the aircraft began experiencing problems with their instruments.
This is Foxtail 28, calling Foxtail 36. My instruments have gone crazy.
Some 40 miles away, Lieutenant Robert Cox, a training instructor, picked up their transmissions, but for some reason they couldn't hear him. Cox called the base station in Fort Lauderdale, and immediately emergency procedures went into effect. Base operations continued to receive Lieutenant Cox's transmissions, which told them Flight 19 was lost and disoriented, but they could not get through to Taylor or any of his pilots. Ham radio operators up and down the coast were also tuned into the lost flight and monitored their frequency. Then, as night fell, one of them caught the last words to ever be heard from Flight 19.
Don't come after us! They look like...
What could have been going on that persuaded Lieutenant Taylor that any rescue attempt would be useless? Meanwhile, according to Berlitz, a huge search and rescue mission had already been launched. But then, the first plane to respond to the emergency, a giant Martin Mariner with a crew of 13, disappeared from radar.
In the end, Flight 19 and the Martin Mariner, 28 men in all, disappeared without a trace, as if they had passed through some window into another dimension.
According to Berlitz, the Naval Board of Inquiry attributed the disappearance to malfunctioning navigational equipment that caused the planes to run out of fuel far out at sea. But is it really possible for this to have happened to all 6 planes simultaneously? Berlitz goes on to say that one member of the Board of Inquiry was quoted as saying, "Flight 19 vanished as completely as if they had flown to Mars." For over 40 years, the disappearance of Flight 19 from a Fort Lauderdale air base in the mid-1940s has been written off as just another of the many Bermuda Triangle anomalies. But could there be a completely different explanation? Could it be there are experiments going on that someone wants us to think are the work of aliens? Is there another Area 51 located in or near the Bermuda Triangle? Is it even remotely conceivable that officials are promoting the idea of aliens in order to cover up what is really going on? Few people would deny that many strange and unexplainable events have taken place in the Bermuda Triangle. The question is, what is the cause of all these strange vanishings? Is this part of the Earth's surface some kind of anomalous energy-time vortex? Or could it be something else?
Puerto Rico is a continual hotspot for UFO activity, and it has been for years. UFOs being seen and photographed going in and out of the water just off the coast of Puerto Rico. Intense activity near a U.S. naval base there called Roosevelt Roads. And the Navy, of course, is very mum about this sort of thing. They don't say very much about it, but it's continuous. For example, there is a beautiful mountain in Puerto Rico in the middle of a tropical rainforest called El Yunque. For some interesting reason, it has continually been a spot of intense UFO activity. And when I was there with an investigator friend of mine, who I highly regard and highly respect, we went up on top of El Yunque. This place is swarming with Walken Hut security. Now, it's interesting to note that Walken Hut Security is also the organization that provides the security at Groom Lake, Site 51, Dreamland, near Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada. Why are they all over El Yunque in Puerto Rico?
Why indeed? After all, it seems highly unlikely that aliens would need the protection of the Walken Hut Security Force. Yet something out of the ordinary definitely seems to be going on in the region.
Sightings of UFOs are quite common in the Bermuda Triangle. There have also been numerous accounts about disc-shaped UFOs under the water in the same way as they perform in the air.
Richard Weiner, author of The Devil's Triangle, relates a case that seems to corroborate these underwater activities. In his book, he tells of a charter boat operator named John Carpenter and of his remarkable experience in the Bermuda Triangle. Carpenter apparently saw 2 craft exploring the water with some sort of projecting energy beam. Carpenter then saw exactly what so many others had reported seeing. Carpenter's experience would seem to confirm that whatever it is that's churning up excitement in the Bermuda Triangle, it goes through the water or through the air with equal ease. Is the beam that Carpenter saw coming from the craft a clue linking these craft to the disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle?
Perhaps these incidents are taking place in the Bermuda Triangle in such numbers because they are close to home. Many theorists believe that alien entities have been visiting Earth for thousands of years. Some even believe they may have found a culture here that was far in advance of those elsewhere on Earth. According to the ancient story, all of Atlantis went to the bottom of the sea after some natural catastrophe 12,000 years ago. Perhaps this was the Atlantis that has become a legend, believed by many now to be little more than a myth.
According to some investigators, the myth of Atlantis took a decisive turn toward reality in 1968 when Dr. Manson Valentine, an underwater archaeologist working with Charles Berlitz, discovered the Bimini Road, an underwater structure of hundreds of huge cut stones, blocks, and columns that formed two roughly parallel lines that veered like a J off the shore of Bimini's North Island.
When Manson Valentine first discovered the Bimini Road, he explained in his own quiet way, "I found it. I think I found Atlantis." Now, the big debate since then has been whether or not the formation was natural or man-made. When Manson was alive, he continually refuted the geologist's claim that the Bimini Road was a natural formation. He pointed out to them that many of the stones were hard, flint-like micrite, not soft beach rock. He also noted that the straight lines of the formation did not parallel the beach line, as natural stones would. Also, some of the huge flat stones were propped up on the corners to form dolmens, a sure sign of human work. Probably the most convincing evidence to show that the Bimini Road was at least partially man-made are the architectural features of the tenons and mortises in the stones. And then there's the evidence of side-scan sonar, that's sound waves that bounce sideways off objects, and that tells us what's really there. Add to that the scientific tests that I and others have done, which show that the crystalline structures of adjacent stones were dissimilar. This proves that at least some of the stones were not formed in place. At Bimini, we've been working on discovering what's along the wall on the western shelf of the island at the old beach line, which is several hundred feet down and clearly visible. And we've come across some what we call projections or protrusions. They're very striking and really almost out of place there. So we have no conclusions on those yet, but we're still working on it. We've also ran across some terraces, and this terracing is very reminiscent of ancient cultures. Now, we can't decide whether it's just natural erosion or whether these are agriculture terraces or living terraces, but they are terraces.
The evidence that humans put the Bimini Road in place is impressive, and many researchers since Valentine have linked the Bimini Road to the legendary lost civilization of Atlantis. But what is there in the myth of Atlantis that can shed light on the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle?
The Bermuda Triangle is sometimes linked to the lost continent of Atlantis because some theorists maintain that Atlantis existed in that area of the Bahamas. The whole Bermuda Triangle area is linked to electromagnetic vortices and to unusual underwater structures, such as the Bimini Road. It may be possible that a combination of these factors may be responsible for the periodic strange occurrences that happen in the Bermuda Triangle. What's more, only about 2% of the ocean floor has been mapped. Is it any wonder then that lost continents like Atlantis in the Atlantic or the lost land of Lemuria in the Pacific can go unproven and undiscovered for century after century?
Does all of this bring us closer to an explanation for the mysterious disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle? Or are we just adding myth upon myth? Space windows that automatically open? The lost city of Atlantis? What should we believe? What can we believe? Before we come to any hard and fast conclusions, you should know there's more, much more to the Bermuda Triangle than has yet to be explained. It isn't just beams of light or beams of energy that punctuate this enigmatic puzzle. There's also some sort of fog or mist that seems to have a variety of peculiar effects on ships and planes. And no less an authority than Albert Einstein said the Bermuda Triangle could be a cosmic doorway leading to a different time and space continuum. The question is, who has the key to that door? Are we looking perhaps at a Bermuda Triangle stargate, a sort of interdimensional transit point? Is there a U.S. naval base in the Bahamas currently functioning as an underwater Area 51? Does this base employ top security measures that have nearly landed unsuspecting tourists in prison? Dr. Michael Preisinger, a German historian with a doctorate in history and sociology, never imagined or expected to have anything to contribute to the controversy of the Bermuda Triangle, a subject he once dismissed. But his own personal encounter with this unexplained phenomenon changed all of that.
I'm also trained as a scuba diving instructor, and in 1995 my company sent me to the Bahamas to develop tourist programs for scuba divers. In the course of my work, I heard persistent reports of persons on boats who had experienced sudden deviations in their compass readings, which had put them off course. My curiosity as a historian got the better of me, and I decided to look for magnetic field anomalies in the places people had reported and bring back exact figures for those deviations. We found clear evidence of magnetic deviations at a majority of the half-dozen locations that I investigated. When I communicated these figures to a number of physicists around the world, every one of them said that such magnetic field anomalies could only be caused by briefly appearing micro-wormholes.
Professor John Wheeler of Princeton University first gave the name wormholes to what he believes are transit tunnels between different dimensions of reality. According to Professor Wheeler, these wormholes may be only a gigafraction of a square inch in size, the number 1 preceded by 33 zeros, preceded by a decimal point. And he thinks these mini black holes are bits of virtual matter, that they only exist for a very limited time.
In a joint radio interview with me in 1997, Dr. Grażyna Fazar, a highly respected physicist in Berlin, commented on my magnetic findings in the Bermuda Triangle. She said, "From a physicist's point of view, gates to hyperspace can be the only reasonable explanation for these mysterious deviation fields." These startling results led me to investigate, first with skepticism, but then with growing interest, some of the other mysterious Bermuda Triangle phenomena. Researchers have linked both compass deviations and the high incidence of UFO sightings in the area with stargates, or interdimensional transit points.
But Dr. Preisinger's research got even more interesting when researchers told him that many of the anomalous sightings took place near the Atlantic Undersea Test and Evaluation Center, or AUTEC, an American naval base on the Bahamas island of Andros. Although the facility only covers 1 square mile on land, it actually comprises 1,670 square miles of the surrounding ocean. Could Dr. Preisinger have stumbled across AUTEC's secrets hidden deep in these waters?
I was surprised that AUTEC offered its research facilities to non-military organizations, and even supplied special top security areas to all its customers. The same ultra-top security as for its own projects. In 1997, a group of duck hunters planned to hunt on a creek about a mile from the AUTEC base. They walked right by prohibited area signs, thinking the signs were old and outdated. Suddenly, they were surrounded by camouflage personnel.
Get on your knees with your hands above your head. Stand up, turn around. Move it.
And Colonel questioned them for hours, threatening to turn them over to the Bahamian police and certain imprisonment. The colonel seemed especially interested in what the hunters had to say about the power boats, but eventually he told them he would believe their duck hunting story if they would swear to keep quiet about the power boats on the creek. And then the colonel released the hunters.
Why was AUTEC conducting tests on torpedo boats on a creek when they had 1,670 square miles of ocean in their designated testing area? Wouldn't it have made more sense to test a torpedo boat and its torpedoes on the open sea? Preisinger has received numerous reports from people who claim to have witnessed strangely shaped metallic aircraft that appeared to be hovering on the surface or moving rapidly and erratically in the waters off Andros Island. Could it be that all the talk about UFOs is just a case of mistaken identity?
A Viennese businessman told me that once he was yachting off the coast of Andros, not far from Ortek, and saw what he thought was a whale lying motionless at the surface. But with his binoculars he realized that it was really the upper part of a shiny, metallic, 150 feet long, cigar-shaped hull lying motionless on the water. As he approached within a nautical half-mile of the strange craft, it suddenly started to move with incredible speed along the surface of the water, leaving nearly no wake, and then it vanished underwater.
Has a lone German scuba diver happened onto an underwater Area 51? Could Ortek, like its alter ego, Area 51 in Nevada, be ground zero for governmental conspiracy and the suppression of extraterrestrial information? Or is the whole UFO idea just a cover for what's really going on?
A Navy engineer came to Ortek in 1985 to help improve the propulsion efficiency of nuclear-powered submarines. He was surprised to receive only a Level 2 security classification. And he was also surprised when he was given ideas, materials, and tools that he thought were way beyond the current knowledge of engineering science. But that worked extremely well for the project.
As far as this engineer was concerned, the Navy had access to some sort of advanced technology that seemed to be far beyond the knowledge of the best engineers. The story soon took an unexpected and sinister turn.
A Level 2 mechanic became curious about all this talk. So one night he sneaked into the top-secret area. The next morning, exhausted from not sleeping all night, he told of seeing an alien ship inside the area and said that the Navy was cooperating with the aliens. A few days later, the base authorities unofficially reported that the mechanic was suffering from malaria from a previous assignment at the Panama Canal and was at the hospital. Then, 2 weeks later, 2 curious sergeants from the maintenance department secretly entered the top-secret area. They claimed they saw a very strange vessel they described as about 200 feet long and cigar-shaped with a smooth surface. 3 days later, while supervising the moving of a huge turbine of a ship, the lifting crane collapsed and killed both enlisted men. Then, when the engineer and a few others attempted to speak with a mechanic in the base hospital, they learned from official reports that the mechanic had died of malaria. The engineer himself was told that the strange craft from the top-secret area was only an empty hull of a new-styled submarine. And then suddenly, and for no reason, he was transferred to another naval base.
Dr. Preisinger is not the only researcher honing in on the possibility of military involvement with so-called UFOs and interdimensional travel.
We're dealing with something which is interdimensional. We're probably dealing with something which has been around for a very long time, not just since 1947. And the UFO phenomenon is something highly complex and is composed of many, many different aspects.
Well, you have to ask the question, are they from another planet? We don't know the answer to that. A lot of people believe they're extraterrestrial. A lot of other people believe that they are from other dimensions, parallel universes, time travelers, that they're us at 2 million years in the future, maybe separated from our reality by some thin psychic membrane.
Has anyone gone through that doorway that we know about? More importantly, are there any witnesses to such an occurrence? Carolyn Cassio, a licensed pilot flying a light plane with one passenger aboard, was clearly seen by 2 employees of the airport at Grand Turk Island. But the airport manager could not get the pilot to answer her radio signal.
This is Grand Turk Airport. Calling plane overhead. Identify yourself. Do you read?
Both the airport manager and an employee watched as the plane circled overhead, easily within their visual range. Time after time, the airport manager keyed the microphone.
This is Grand Turk Airport. Identify yourself. Do you read?
There was no response, but both the startled airport manager and the employee heard the mic on the plane key open, and what they heard sent chills up their spines.
I don't understand it. This should be Grand Turk, but there's nothing there. It's the right place on the map and the right shape, but this island is uninhabited. No buildings, no landing strip, nothing. It has to be Grand Turk, but it's just not there.
The airport manager and her employee could only watch helplessly as the totally confused pilot banked the aircraft and flew out of sight, never to be heard from again. Could it be that Carolyn Cassio had somehow flown across that thin membrane of dimension and time and actually saw Grand Turk Island as it was in some pristine past? Do the magnetic fluctuations in the area provide some scientific clues to these odd and unexplainable anomalies? Will the Bermuda Triangle finally give up some hints as to what has caused decades of strange disappearances? Will investigators at last find something tangible to help explain the long list of missing ships, planes, and people? Or will we just add one more category to the missing list: missing time? So far, several explanations have been advanced to try and account for the strange disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle. Mini wormholes, power from the lost city of Atlantis, UFOs and secret military experiments have all been suggested, but none of these solutions account for the kind of frightening event experienced by Chuck Wakely. Chuck was a private pilot on a charter for Sunline Aviation in Miami. He had completed his run to Nassau and was heading back to Miami. The sky, he said, was perfectly clear. Suddenly, he was surrounded by an intense greenish light. So powerful, in fact, that he could no longer see the outside of the plane.
My instruments started malfunctioning, so bad I thought they were going to bust apart. By then, the aircraft was glowing so intensely I couldn't see the horizon at all, or even the moon and the stars. Then, bingo, the glow was gone and everything was right normal again.
Chuck Wakely is not the only pilot to encounter this murky haze. There have been others with even more bizarre implications.
The Miami Tower was called for a time check. The instrument panel clock was right on. They were 20 minutes out and right on schedule. Later, the co-pilot would remember seeing a strange green mist that enveloped the aircraft, but otherwise everything was completely normal. But in the Miami Tower, the air traffic controller was jolted when the blip of the approaching Flight 727 suddenly vanished from the radar screen. The controller immediately went into emergency priority status. Within minutes, the Coast Guard Search and Rescue Squadron was in action, and the Miami airport prepared for the worst. When the flight attendant checked for any last-minute instructions, she couldn't believe she had completed her usual 10 to 12-minute cabin duties in less than 3 minutes. And the co-pilot was surprised to discover the greenish mist that enveloped the aircraft since the time check was gone, not only from about the aircraft, but from the sky itself. Precisely 10 minutes from the time Flight 727 had vanished from the radar screen, it just as suddenly and mysteriously reappeared. The complex equipment was in perfect working order, as the ongoing computer and manual scans verified. Flight 727 landed without incident, with the crew understandably curious about the emergency equipment along the runway. And they were all incredulous when told that their arrival was 10 minutes late, despite the fact that the instrument panel clock synchronized exactly with the earlier tower time check. It was now, along with every one of the crew's watches, 10 minutes slow.
Was that green fog somehow responsible for the lost 10 minutes? Or could it somehow identify the doorway into another time or another dimension? Whatever it is, the crew and passengers of Flight 727 can be grateful that all they lost was 10 minutes. Captain Don Henry's terrifying encounter with the green fog resulted in a much bigger loss.
We were coming back from Puerto Rico on the good news, with a tow of 2,500 ton on 1,000 feet of 4-inch hawser. I was enjoying some downtime in my cabin when the electric started acting up. We checked the whole system, generators, breakers, shunts, just fine. Nothing wrong below. But topside, there weren't anything right. There was a funny-looking fog, I guess you'd call it, kind of oozing all over the barge. I figured I'd better take another good look inside, and that's just about when that blow smacked into us. 25 years at sea, I never saw the likes of that squall. It come out of nowhere. All our instruments were going crazy. Compass, radio, radar, engine monitors, absolutely berserk. At first, we was just worried about losing the tow, but then we started getting worried about our own skins. We were redlined at 850, big twin 2,000 horse EMV diesels churning up green water, and we couldn't make a foot of headway. Something had a hold of us and wouldn't let go. Then just like that, the squall was over. We set the automatic pilot to go check damage, and we haven't lost no rigging or deck gear. But then what I saw gave me goosebumps all over. A half-ton of hawser stiff-stretched after the fantail, and not a thing connected to the bitter end. When we got her hauled in, you could see there wasn't no eye-splice, and the line wasn't raggedy like it had parted. No, sir. Looked like it had been whacked off with a fire axe. The sun was out just like before, and there was a bone-aching chill in the air. Yet the rails and fittings were hot enough to give you a smart burn. We had a narrow escape from whatever took hold of us out there.
A half-ton of rope stretched out to nothing, and the barge simply gone. But gone where? Could it have sunk without leaving any debris at all? And what kind of force could hold up a half-ton hawser stretched out over the water? The mysteries of the Bermuda Triangle are so diverse that no serious evidence has yet been discovered that covers all the possibilities. Could it be that the real culprits are invaders from another world? Are secret military experiments creating the havoc? Is the power of Atlantis still somehow being felt? Or are there other explanations?
The blue holes in the ocean apparently have the quality of swallowing things that fall into them more quickly than other parts of the sea. It is a curious fact that no debris has been found from ships or planes which have disappeared in the triangle. It has even been suggested that for some reason it has been important to take ships and planes intact to somewhere else.
About once a year, some salvage crew will claim they found one of the missing TBM Avenger torpedo bombers. And the most recent one took place right off Fort Lauderdale a few years back. They said they found 3 or 4 planes together on the bottom, and that sounded really like they had found the missing Flight 19. But doing a little research, I found out that after the war, they had a lot of planes or TBMs at the Fort Lauderdale Naval Air Station that they had cannibalized parts off of for other planes. And they couldn't fly those planes out, so to get rid of them, they loaded them on barges at Port Everglades, took them out to sea, and shoved them overboard. And my theory is that's what the 3 or 4 planes they found off Fort Lauderdale were.
So many other unexplainable tragedies have taken place here that the area has earned an even more sinister name, the Devil's Triangle. And that brings up another important question. Are these vanishings exclusive to just this part of the world?
The strange goings-on in the Devil's Triangle are not exclusive to the Devil's Triangle. There's also an area off of the east coast of Japan called the Devil's Sea. And if you went in the center of the Devil's Triangle and you bored a hole through the center of the Earth, directly through the center of the core, you would come out in the center of the Devil's Sea. And the Devil's Sea and the Devil's Triangle are the only 2 places on Earth where the compass points to the true north, not the magnetic north.
Manson Valentine connected UFOs and magnetic fields in a story about Admiral Richard Byrd, a person who he greatly admired. When Admiral Byrd flew over the icebound South Magnetic Pole, he saw what he described as a land in the sky. It was a green, well-watered, fertile, tree-studded country. Definitely not a mirage. Later that year, Admiral Byrd was flying over the North Magnetic Pole, describing a similar scene during a live radio broadcast to the nation. He was rudely cut off. Manson believed that intense magnetic fields could open doors to other dimensions. So Admiral Byrd's land in the sky was a real and objective world where planes, ships, and even people could mysteriously disappear.
But there are those who keep searching for an explanation. Perhaps someday some other intrepid explorer will stumble into Admiral Byrd's lost world. And while it doesn't seem very likely, even the military may one day be more forthcoming about their secret experiments. Serious scientists are still trying to come to grips with the unique magnetic fluctuations that suggest minuscule wormholes might somehow be to blame. And perhaps someday we will even be able to solve the mystery of the green mist and the strange lights seen by Columbus. But until then, the solution to the terrifying phenomenon of the Bermuda Triangle remains shrouded in its own impenetrable fog.